Welcome to Taking the High Road, a special show dedicated to the trucking industry, specifically at the confluence of recruiting, retention, and compliance. In the fourth year as the host of this show, I bring over 2 decades of industry experience, both on the carrier side as well as the vendor side. And each week, I interview industry experts and thought leaders who bring their insights to the driver lifecycle as we discuss the industry's greatest challenges. I always appreciate your feedback, good or bad. Don't forget to leave a rating and a review. I'd also like to thank and highlight the show's valuable sponsors. Their dedication and commitment to the industry and to the show is greatly appreciated. If you're interested in being a sponsor of the show or joining me for an interview, please email Jeremy at takingthehigherroad.com. This week, I'm honored to be joined by a great friend, a young industry leader who, along with the company she works for, is very active and engaged in the trucking industry, Madison Conway, Global VP of Marketing and Communications for the DDC Group. Thank you so much for joining me, Madison.
Thank you, Jeremy. Thrilled to be here.
Well, I'd love to learn about your journey into the trucking industry, your take on the, where we're at currently when it comes to, modernization and innovation across the industry. And perhaps you can share a little about the DDC Group and how you're helping companies succeed. I definitely want to touch on your industry engagement, especially as it pertains to the industry's image, and highlight a prestigious award that you were presented with at this year's ATA MC&E conference. And then lastly, I'd love to hear what's on the horizon for DDC. Perhaps you can share some, suggestions as we prepare for 2025 and beyond. Does that work for you?
Sounds great. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, as you know, I generally start each episode with a book recommendation. I'm curious if there's a particular book you've read that's been especially impactful to you.
Sure. So one that I usually recommend to any of my friends and family in business is Exponential Organizations. And when I say in business, it really is any business, even if it's a small business, if it's a healthcare practice, or it's something like what DDC does, or if you're in trucking. Exponential Organizations by Salim Ismail is a fantastic book, so highly recommend. I think it's very cost affordable on Amazon. You can get it primed, so I would say definitely check that one out. I think that one has been foundational in my mindset towards business management, collaboration, approaching different personalities on teams, setting goals. So I would definitely recommend that one. One I'm reading right now, though, which if anybody in your audience is a Malcolm Gladwell fan, he did recently come out with The Revenge of the Tipping Point in September. So I am reading that one right now, and that one is a lot of fun.
Awesome. Well, Exponential Organization, is that what you said?
Yes.
So I wrote
Organizations by Salim Ismail.
Awesome. So I'm not familiar with it, so I'll add that to my Goodreads list. I'm not sure if we're connected on Goodreads, but we should be because I know you read a lot too. I'll add that one, and then I have not read the Malcolm Gladwell book, the Tipping Point. I know, but I saw that a new one just came out, so that's on my list already. So I'm glad that you're reading it, and anxious to hear your thoughts on the other side of that.
Yeah, for sure.
So let's start with you. Can you share, your story and how you made your way into the trucking industry?
Sure. So my trucking industry experience started with DDC. So I was working in marketing communications as a young professional at different public relations agencies and marketing agencies. And I was actually on the global commerce team with the state of Georgia and the Georgia Economic Development Department, working in marketing for the state, for site selection, foreign direct investment. And I wanted to move into a corporate role. And so I found the position opening with DDC. And this is just at the turn of the year, at the end of 2012 and the beginning of 2013. So I started with DDC in January of 2013. And that was when I first was introduced really to the trucking industry. I had not worked with any logistics professionals before. And so I came into DDC and I learned a lot about their clients and what they do and the services that they provide. And it was, I guess, what people call baptism by fire, right? So I was just thrown right in and I absolutely loved it. And then in fall of 2015, I actually left DDC. So I actually decided to bounce around to a few different industries and and explore a little bit more. And so I went to telecom. I did some branding and telecommunications, and I also did some partner marketing in e-commerce until I came back to DDC in March of 2019. So right after my first maternity leave, I rejoined the DDC team and I was able to come back into the trucking industry. And it was exactly what I missed. It was exactly what I loved about the industry from the first time I met everybody. And I was excited to be back and excited to be back with the clients that we love to serve and the partners that we love to work with. And so since then, I've gotten more and more involved from, as you know, working in with the ATA. I've got participated in the LEAD ATA program, which was wonderful. I was actually first recommended to participate in LEAD ATA in 2014 before I actually left DDC the first time. A friend, a mentor and a friend and a fellow colleague in the industry, Don Lynn, had actually said, you should really check out the LEAD ATA program. So when I came back to DDC, that was one of the first things I did was check it out. And I'm so happy I did. I grew so many relationships with that. And now I've just continued my involvement from my state association, my local chapter, and then several other associations and groups within the industry. So it's been quite a journey.
Yeah, it's funny that you say a couple things. You left the industry and then realized I kind of missed that, and I think it's something special. I'm glad that you noticed it. I'm glad you came back, but I think it says a lot about the industry in general that it's not uncommon that if you leave, first of all, a lot of people don't once they get in and they submerge, themselves. But if you do, that you want to come back and that you do end up coming back. So I'm glad you did. And I think the first time we met was through the LEAD ATA program, your involvement. The company that I founded, DriverReach, was a sponsor when you were going through that process, that program. And I'm a huge proponent of it. So I'm glad that you were involved with that. Let's talk a little bit about just where the trucking industry is currently, especially when it comes to modernization and innovation. I'm guessing you have some idea and some thoughts about kind of where we're at today.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. So trucking really has made massive strides to catch up with other industries in the last 10 to 15 years. There is a long way to go, but when we're looking at other industries and comparing them to trucking, it's not apples to apples, right? It's kind of like when you have one child say to you, well, so-and-so gets this. And you want to say, well, you're not so-and-so, right? So we do need to be very careful when we're comparing ourselves and our industry to other industries, to not have a negative sentiment about where we align, but rather what should work best for trucking. And why haven't we grown as fast and with as much fervor as maybe some other industries have? Why haven't we seized the opportunity to invest in technology and to innovate in the way that other industries have? Some of those are inherent. Some of those are things that cannot be changed because they are part of the trucking engine. They are part of what makes us tick. They are part of what keeps this industry going. So they cannot be compromised. But there are some things that we have been able to adapt to leverage, to innovate, not only our fleets, but also the ways that we work, right? So I think there's, groups like the ATA do a fantastic job, I think, of telling the story about how trucking has innovated in regards to emissions and becoming more environmentally friendly. And they have to tell that story, right? Because of different legislation that's coming down on motor carriers and different challenges we're facing that arena. But beyond that, we're innovating in safety and not just for in-cab, but also for the general public, right? So there's a lot of technology that's being implemented within each fleet to help actually create safer roads. And then also optimizing routes, improving operations, improving the way that the different employees within the organization work together. So I think that trucking really has done a fantastic job, and they don't toot their own horn. The companies are innovating, like I said, not just fleets, not just in-cab technology, not just cameras, not just predictive analytics, but you also see innovating in ways of working and hiring needs and marketing initiatives. So I really think that as the generations are moving through the workplace, you're starting to see some of those fresh new ideas come in that are allowing the trucking industry to embrace some of those ideas that other industries maybe have already executed maybe 5 to 10 years ago.
Yeah, you've just told my story. I mean, that's part of the reason why I started building technology for myself. I mean, I'm going back to like 2009, and I ended up founding DriverReach just because of the technological deficiency that I noticed across the industry. Now, again, this is in the area that I was operating in, recruiting and compliance. And to your point, you can't just compare. When you compare that to other more innovative or progressive industries, we were so far behind. Um, it's not always the same, and I think that's a really good analogy about, you can't just compare, it's apples and oranges sometimes. But I also think it's relevant, and it's a really good point that the newer generation that's coming up into the trucking industry is helping to close that gap anyway. And so I know I have conversations with trucking, leaders, carriers, and vendors and suppliers all the time. On this show every week. And I've noticed, a majority of just the leaders out there in the industry, they've identified the need to innovate, or they risk the success of their company, right? Their business continuity. I know you touched on some of the other initiatives that companies are taking outside of, investing in technology. Can you expand a little bit more on those, and maybe how, these can help move the needle?
Yes, absolutely. So, this year, I think we all have witnessed the economic impact that trucking has faced. So even if you're not a carrier, you can see it, you can feel it. When you go to the trade shows, as an example, not everybody's showing up. Not everybody's able to travel to everything anymore. So it's been difficult to justify some additional expenses, specifically technology and investment, right? So I think looking at some of those, in the midst of these challenging times, you have to be able to think about planning for the future without compromising the now. So you don't want to just shove everything out of sight, out of mind, because you can't do it right now. You still want to be able to make sure you're kind of planning on how you will tackle these in the future. But for now, you still need to make progress. So just because you don't have a check that you can cash right now to invest in some of these technologies or major projects to innovate internally, there are other things that you can do, right? So I would suggest looking inwards, looking at your operation, looking at your teams, looking at your processes and your efficiencies to see where can you improve, where can you optimize your operation. So asking questions like, do we have SOPs, standard operating procedures? If not, let's create some. Let's make sure that we are maximizing our efficiency in our use of our company resources, right? So do we have service level agreements? Do we have SLAs with all of our vendors? Are we protecting our spend? Are we holding our vendors accountable? Right now, that's a pretty easy way to put your foot down and make sure that you are able to continue improving without having to spend more, but rather protecting what you've already spent. So I would say that's a key to make sure that you're maximizing, again, those ROI on those investments that you've already committed to. And then looking inward at your staff. How are you evaluating your current staff members? How are you engaging with them? How are you driving productivity there? So all three of these are things that you can do, not only to improve while you can't necessarily invest in a big fancy technology project right now, but these are also mechanisms that you can use to then bring inbound recommendations on how to optimize, how to innovate, and how to improve. So all of these will create opportunities for you to modernize. All of these mechanisms will allow communication inbound and up the chain so that people can flag, this isn't working, this needs to change, I have an idea, right? So that and then you can start the internal research now so that when the timing is right, you have a better context and understanding of when and how you may want to make those investments in the future. And also, it's a great way to actually think about the ones that you had planned on and match them up against some of this other feedback you're getting internally, against your broken SOPs, against your missing SLAs, and against your employee feedback. You're able to say, oh, well, we were planning on this huge implementation. But what we're finding by just looking inward is maybe that's not such a great idea. Maybe we should look somewhere else first. And it helps you reprioritize maybe some of those investments for innovation in different ways.
Well, I'm guessing that you know all of this because you sort of probably do this yourself, right? Like, can you speak to how DDC is like implementing some of the strategies that you're talking about to ensure your own success? I mean, this has been a challenging last couple of years, to say the least.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So I mentioned SOPs. DDC FPO, part of the DDC group, is a business process outsourcing provider. So we do outsourcing and technology solutions for business processes. So SOPs are a big part of the way that we work. Organizing processes and operations, we can't just deliver it externally, right? We have to do it internally. So, for example, we rely very heavily on project management software. I can speak to our marketing department as that's my department, very well organized. Anyone can jump in at any point in time in our project management tool and see exactly where a project is, whose court is the ball in, where's the delay, where are the risks, see the feedback back and forth. So relying on tools like these allow us to have visibility into the way things are working, help standardize processes. It allows us to be more nimble. So if we need to change something like a deadline or maybe a deliverable or an asset, we're able to do it in a holistic manner. So you're able to look at the entire project or the entire program. And by leveraging something like a project management software allows us to again, tackle it in a holistic manner. So it's not just a one-off solution or one-off amendment to the project. We're able to actually look at it in comparison to the overarching goal and making sure that we're all aligned, the entire team. SLAs, I mentioned, as a provider, we prioritize SLAs. Service level agreements are performance-based with DDC. So we leverage those to ensure that the expectations between our clients and ours are agreed upon. And when I say agreed upon, I think agreement with expectations is very important. In fact, I worked in places where you didn't say expectations, you said agreements. However, agreements to me, when it comes to expectations, I'm not saying like it is not a kumbaya moment. I'm saying an agreement equals commitment, and it equals understanding. So someone needs to understand and understand what they're committed to, and also be dedicated to delivering that on all sides, right? So we'll have performance-based SLAs. They could be incentivized so that team members are encouraged to go above and beyond, not only just for themselves or for DDC, but also for our clients. And that also allows our clients to know that we are actually invested in their business and their success and allowing them to achieve their goals. So again, those SLAs are really important. So we use them for all of our clients. And it also enables us to very easily make suggestions to projects when we see opportunities as we're encountering some of those outcomes. Just before we deliver them, we may uncover some opportunities that might improve the client's operation a little bit better, or how we are delivering that service, right? So how we're actually executing that. So it allows improvement on all sides. I mentioned current staff. Employee engagement is absolutely key. I think when you're looking at not only trying to get the inbound feedback on what can be optimized or improved, but also just driving productivity, right? So you want to make sure that all employees are fully engaged, fully on board with what you're trying to accomplish as a company. So we hold weekly one-on-one meetings, for example, between manager and employee. We have quarterly reviews. This enables us to create enough time and enough channels between the employees and their managers so that it's not just housekeeping. It's not just checking the boxes, but we're able to allow that time for new ideas, opportunities, discuss challenges, cover ideas for professional growth, things like that. But in modernization in general and how DDC looks at modernization and improving our ways of working, once we actually have that short list of ideas, I would say before adding a service or a product, the number one key for me is the goal. So what is the goal? And this is not just a technology, right? So when somebody comes to me as the leader of marketing and says, we need to invest in this event, we should be here, we should be there, we should advertise XYZ. I say, what is your goal? Because maybe that's not what you should be doing, right? Maybe there's another way to achieve that goal that's smarter, that's more efficient, that's stronger, that's better, that's faster. So when we're looking at modernizing, first you need to set the goal and then figure out what the strategy is to meet that goal and then start looking for the right solution. So just because you see an advertisement for a very exciting technology that is promising the world, that doesn't mean that you should get it right now, right? You need to look at your corporate goals and adjust the corporate goals if it's necessary, but don't prioritize the product or service. Make sure that you have the goal first, because otherwise you will spend all this time and money in this technology or whatever it is that's promising you this transformation. And if it doesn't align to your goal, then you're just in a whole heap of hurt, right? So that's probably my number one suggestion on modernizing that we do. And then, of course, making sure that it works with your internal systems. That's another something that we see sometimes with our clients, but we prioritize is making sure that, before we invest in anything, is it duplicative? As we're doing that exploratory work on what is going to meet that goal, do we already have something in-house that can help us with this? How can we maximize our existing resources so that we're not creating churn and we're not creating waste?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You live and breathe what you help and teach, who you partner, how you partner with people. And speaking of partnerships, back to your involvement in the industry, your commitment to the industry from that perspective. I mentioned the award, the Mike Russell Industry Image Award, which was great. It was so encouraging, and it was I know that was a big deal to you. I've seen your commitment, DDC's commitment to the industry, just increase over the years through association involvement, different services offered and growing, and just support through industry branding initiatives. What would you say, and especially for those who I always encourage, and I know you do too, to get involved in the industry and be more engaged and active? What value does this commitment that you have? What value does that bring to you, and why do you invest in these ways?
Right, it's a good question. So, we are not. You do not just jump into the industry associations just to say that you do it, right? I think it has to be much deeper than that. So for DDC, for example, for myself, I am able to learn so much more about the industry when I am with members of the industry, when we are in working groups, when we are in sessions together, serving on committees, when we are in an environment where somebody is asking a peer, but that works at a trucking company, is someone's asking them specific questions about what they're investing in, what they're rolling out, what challenges they're experiencing. That is when I get the most benefit, right? Because I'm able to hear firsthand what is bothering them. Not just for DDC, but any allied member, any supplier, service provider, we would be absolutely ignorant to think that our point of contact at a motor carrier who owns, like, for example, the DDC agreement, we would be absolutely ignorant if we thought the only thing that they had to worry about was their back office processing, right? We need to understand, if we're going to be a true strategic partner, we need to understand that there is so much more on their plate. There are so many more phone calls that they're getting. There are so many more people that are demanding things of them. They've got, for example, when we went through the program with Lead AT, I was able to learn so much about all the different legislation that is impacting trucking companies right now. The fact that they have got these deadlines about electrification and other serious legislation that's on them and regulations that they have to meet and they have to face, let alone just the capacity issues that are not coming from Capitol Hill. But when we're looking at whether it's hiring enough technicians or finding the parking spots. There is so much that the service provider would be unaware of if they didn't get involved. I mean, look at the conversation around nuclear verdicts, right? But knowing that a lot of times the same people who sign off on our agreements and our partnerships, and who we need to remind them that they can trust in us as their strategic partner, those same people have to deal with all of those other issues, right? So being a part of the industry allows us to learn so much more about our clients and the different challenges that they are facing. It also allows us to uncover opportunities of benefits that we are currently providing, but we're not vocalizing, right? So when you're looking at DDC and how we market and how we talk to our customers and, and the different SLAs we provide, right? So turnaround time, getting their data faster so that they can optimize their routes, being able to cut hours out of their line haul, all the benefits that DDC touts, as an example. Something we normally wouldn't tout until recently would be data security. We have robust data security and business continuity, and that's something where we have had carriers deal with data breaches from other parties in the past, and we have been the ones that they call. DDC has been the ones who has staffed up and been able to get them over the hump and get them back on their feet after they had a security breach, right? So we've been able to protect them from those issues worsening, and we've been able to prevent some of those issues from happening. But that's something that is not really talked about, right? Because until recently, it hasn't been a very serious issue until recent years. But after getting involved, you realize, oh no, this is a real serious issue. This isn't just happening to the 2 or 3 clients who called us. We're realizing this is so much more. So we're able to tell them, hey, we can help ease that pain too, right? So as a service provider, you're able to really be that partner and say, it's not just these 5 core benefits that we, can recite to you. It's also all of these other issues that we now see that you're dealing with, right? These carriers that are onboarding major, new ELD software and platforms. And unless I got involved in some of these groups, I wouldn't have learned about the significant increase in back office work that some of these carriers are having to deal with. And all of this, the surge in data that's now hitting their desks. And I'm able to say, oh, we didn't know that you needed help with that, but we can help with that, right? So I think there's a lot of things that you uncover in supporting the industry that you're able to learn. But then, of course, just pushing the industry further, right? I think it's when you are able to then share your expertise and share your experience to help everybody continue to improve, then the industry as a whole will become more competitive. And that only benefits everybody who's involved, right? So I think being able to give back in that way is key. But we're able to be involved, and we're lucky enough to be involved in several industries, associations, and committees. I know a lot of companies can't. So I would just say that really try to lean into that if that's something that you feel that you may be called or compelled to do. And if it comes at a cost, try and make a case for it. But there are several ways where you're able to just volunteer your time and your expertise by joining some sort of committee, some sort of council, like the Digital LTL Council, for example. We're able to join that and push the digitization of the industry, but it doesn't cost anything. So there's a lot of things like that you're able to, I think, if anybody's interested in getting more involved and realizing some of these benefits, it doesn't necessarily mean it comes at a cost.
Yeah, it may be your time, but that's in a good way. That's an investment of your time. You're going to learn a lot, as you just elaborated on, and also you build relationships. That's again, kind of full circle with some of the things that most special about this industry. And I know you and I both share that sentiment. And I think most of the people, certainly they go through the LEAD ATA program, but also just in general that have been around the industry for at least a few years, know how special it is. I do want to talk about the future, though. I'm curious, kind of, to know what's next on the horizon for DDC FPO.
Yeah. So much. So much is on the horizon for DDC FPO. So, and I would say the global group. So if anybody is not familiar, DDC FPO is a part of the DDC group, which was established in 1989 as direct data capture. So that's what we were founded upon, was accurate, timely, reliable capture of data. And then we grew globally. So there are some very exciting plans, and unfortunately, I cannot share them all with you. But we are excited to grow our commitment to this industry and really invest more in our roots and continue to bring new and exciting offerings to this industry as well as others. So it's definitely an exciting time. We will be continuing to build out our auto extraction structuring solution, which has really taken off this year, and the carriers that we're working with are seeing fantastic results, which is a tool that leverages that is able to structure unstructured data and put it straight into a TMS, right? So there's a lot of things like that use machine learning. We are not going to be, diluting our legacy services, though. We'll be continuing to invest in those and make those even stronger and better and more efficient, and enabling those with more technology. So, traditional freight billing, rate auditing, POD processing, customs brokerage. We're going to continue involving our customer care. So some people might be familiar with our nearshore announcement that happened in April of this year. We announced our locations in Colombia and Costa Rica. So we're going to be continuing to grow our customer care offering to really refine and improve and optimize the customer experience that our trucking companies are able to offer for their customers. So a lot of investment, a lot of growth. We're going to be bringing on new technology partners, which I'm very excited to announce once I can, to really improve our offering. But it's 2025 is already off to an exciting start, I would say, here at DDC.
Well, so for as companies are kind of thinking about that for their own plans, for 2025, any thoughts, what suggestions do you have for just how they can continue to either modernize, ongoing, or even just getting started if that's not kind of where they're at yet and they're still sort of unsure?
Sure. So modernization can be a daunting task. I think the word itself can either strike fear in some hearts or just completely be a turnoff, right? But when you look at modernizing and innovating, again, you need to think about the goal. Why are you doing that? And then what actually has to be done, right? So that DDC FPO's mission statement is to allow companies to focus on core competencies so they can achieve their goals, right? So we provide solutions so you can focus on your core competencies and achieve your goals. So that may not always be the very sexy machine learning data processing tool, right? Sometimes it's less obvious. So, for example, a lot of trucking companies are in the AS400, right? Does everybody have the bandwidth right now to move off of it, let alone the R&D funding, right? We talked a little bit earlier about how tight the market has been, and it's difficult to get justification for expenses. But when you're looking at maintaining some core systems that your service delivery and your organization is reliant upon, so that you can continue to grow and you can look to the horizon and you can see what's next and you can set those goals with optimism. Sometimes it's, okay, how can we make sure that we're able to get what we need internally to keep things moving? Business continuity, at the very least, how can we ensure that, right? So knowing that RPG programming is hard to come by, DDC, for example, was able to offer that, right? And so sometimes that's not necessarily the shiniest thing on the shelf. It's not the DDC Sync mobile app, right? But it's something that people need to be able to continue moving forward. And I would say look at that as when you're look at what you need to continue moving forward and achieve those goals again, and then find the solutions to find those. So that's what I would suggest. I definitely would say also get involved. As I mentioned before, there are so many benefits to getting involved. Don't be afraid of competitors when you're getting involved, because if they're a competitor today, they could be a partner tomorrow. Okay. Iron sharpens iron. We're all improving when we're in this together. And obviously you don't want to show your full hand. You don't want to give away all your secrets, but sharing your expertise and your experience and allowing others to do the same with you will only push us all forward. So I would say, as you get involved, don't be too fearful about competitors and partners, and think about that long-term ecosystem. And then I would also say making sure that you're bringing people internally along for the journey. So of course you'll need buy-in. You'll have to get permission from your CFO, right? And that is its own project, right? If my CFO sees this, I'm sure he's going to chuckle. But making those business cases, but not only just to the CFO, right? You need to make sure that the people who will have expectations of them, it's an agreement, right? It's not just an expectation. You need to make sure that those people understand and are committed to delivering what it is that you're signing up for. Because if you're looking at a new project or initiative that's going to require other people, you need to make sure that they're on board, or at least that they understand what sort of commitments are on the line for them. So I say bringing people along for the journey is key for success. If you want the tool to be adopted, if you want to make sure that, again, that it's in the interoperability and that the integrations will work, you need to work with those other departments in advance, do the internal research, get the internal buy-in, because otherwise the implementation will be a lot messier and you'll have a lot more churn in your processes than if you start on the right foot by getting the right people involved and in the room on the decision-making process.
Wise words, Madison. First of all, thank you so much for joining me.
Of course.
I really appreciate the fact that you're a champion for the industry. You raise the bar, and honestly, just for being a great human being.
Oh, thank you. You too. You too. I learned from the best.
Thank you for joining me on Taking the Higher Road. Once again, special thanks to the sponsors of this show. We really appreciate you. If you're interested in being a sponsor or joining me for an interview, please email Jeremy at takingthehigherroad.com. Until next time, thank you for taking the higher road.